Hello, Marvelites. Welcome to another edition of the MCUExchange podcast. Today's week is a big week for us, and my name is Aaron, and I'm the host for this episode. Alongside me is Charles
Up.
and Joe.
Hello.
Yes, and want to give a shout out to all our listeners over at Spotify, Podbean, over at YouTube, and just want to make a quick announcement before we go break down the latest news. We have a new Facebook page. It's facebook.com/the MCU Exchange. It's with a the. And for those of you who are asking why do you have a new page? Apparently, our Facebook page, who have 40,000 organic likes, was unpublished, unfortunately. But we're not going to be phased by that. So we created a new page, and you can like us over there at Facebook. It's facebook.com/the MCU Exchange for more quality content and breaking news about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. All right, let's dig into the latest news in the past week about the Marvel Cinematic Universe on the rundown. First up, the Loki Disney Plus series will set up Kang the Conqueror in the MCU. The big villain, Kang the Conqueror, is rumored to be introduced in the Loki Disney Plus series. Charles, what are your thoughts on this?
It's crazy because for the longest time I thought that the Loki show would be quote unquote the least interesting for me because the prospect of seeing the same old Loki do the same crazy stuff didn't necessarily excite me. But
Mhm.
with the rumors that this was the only show so far that was gonna get a second season and everyone else, this Kang stuff is absolute mind blowing if it ends up being true. It makes sense because Kang is very integral to the time space continuum of Marvel. He's sort of the villain that does time travel a lot. And if Loki is
Yep.
gonna be doing a lot of time travel, it only makes sense that at some point they may cross paths or maybe we hear Kang's name. Also because the Time Barons Authority is there, there's a strong connection with that organization has a strong connection with Kang. So it's not exactly surprising if you really think about it, but it is surprising nonetheless that they're really fucking going for it if this ends up being true.
And there's this line in Avengers Endgame, was said by Tony Stark. He said that you mess with time, it tends to mess back, and it's a line that some people would have forgot. If some people would miss in the movie,
Mm.
but it plainly sets up major storylines in the post Infinity Saga world right now. And this is interesting because will be a new ground for the MCU because they're setting up the villain slowly in a series instead of a post credit scene just like Thanos in Infinity Saga. Joe, what do you think? Is it better in that way that they set up a major villain in a different platform for this in a Disney Plus series instead of a post-credit scene of a big budget Marvel movie?
The fun thing about the fact that they introduced Kang over Disney Plus series is the fact that Kang is the one character I think they can kind of do that with because we don't know which version of Kang this is going to be. If I remember correctly, there's the Council of Kang, where the different incarnations of Kang the Conqueror from different timelines kind of consult each other over and over again, so they can utilize this Disney Plus series to kind of introduce a version of that character before building up to the big bad version we see in the big films. Or they also are trying to sideline him a bit to introduce the character, his concepts, while having like a mini arc running on the side. Because we do know that they're not going to go for another 10-year plus saga like the Infinity Saga. So we could see like smaller storylines right now as they build up towards Kang for his complete different storyline.
And the question is, if he's a member of the TVA or if he would be
Mm-hmm.
an established Kang the Conqueror already that's being on the top of the TVA's most wanted list, like in the
Yeah.
series.
I love the rumor going around that people are automatically connecting it to the last rumor casting that Owen Wilson is playing Kang the Conqueror though.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
just a little hard to.
Yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow. My worry, I mean, me and Pierre briefly talked about it on Twitter. My worry is that they're gonna link Kang to Tony Stark, which in the comics is so not the case. He's a
Mm,
descendant of Reed Richards rather than Tony Stark, but
Mhm.
because in the MCU we can credit Tony Stark as being the one who discovered time travel. My worry is that Kang is gonna be like a descendant of Tony Stark. He's gonna be the
mm,
great great grandson of Tony Stark, which I don't want to happen because I mean, how many fucking Tony Stark connections can we have? I mean, they
Yes.
already changed that big Ultron origin to for him. So
Mm.
I definitely want them to stick with the Reed Richards stuff, but if they do the Tony Stark stuff, I'll be very disappointed.
Yeah. It means that it's the post Infinity Saga world, and we could finally see we could get away with Tony Stark persona for a while, and establish more major characters along the way. The next news is there's a rumor going around that Red Hulk is going to make his debut in the She-Hulk Disney Plus series. And fans have been longing for this ever since Incredible Hulk in 2008. And now we'll finally get to see Thunderbolt Ross in all of his Red Hulk glory. Joe, what are your thoughts about this? Having him debut in a Disney Plus series instead of a movie is kind of weird or kind of okay.
I think it's okay. I think it's pretty good because first of all, we most of the time we didn't expect Red Hulk to appear because there was always the issue of the Hulk movie rights not existing. So introducing him through She-Hulk is not a bad idea. I'm really curious though if he's like the villain of the series because that he was a villain originally before he became kind of an anti-hero through Thunderbolts. But like that's the next thing. It all connects now because we also have the effect that this kind of is pushing towards that Thunderbolts rumor. I do wonder if they're gonna have William Hurt, I think, if he's gonna voice the character, or if they're gonna have someone younger voice the character because he does change physically. It's an interesting, a very exciting prospect. I'm just really curious how they're gonna pull it off.
Charles, what do you think?
Well, like Joe said, for the longest time, it was kind of hard to imagine him showing up. Um, as a character on his own, Red Hulk is kind of fucking mind blowing to me that they turned Thunderbolt Ross into another Hulk.
Mm,
I think he was always fine as the like the Lex Luthor to Bruce's Banner's Superman. He was sort of powerless, but he had a lot of anger and deep seated stuff about Hulk being the way he is. But it is interesting. I wonder if I mean we saw some old pictures of William Hurt lately, and he didn't look exactly good. I hope he's fine. I hope there's nothing wrong with
mm,
him because I've heard about his health and he him needing a cane and stuff like that. But as an idea, I think it's very interesting. Um, Obviously, if you're gonna give Ross that big of a story, that means you're gonna have to revisit some of his stuff with in the Incredible Hulk, like his beef with Banner and the whole Gamma experiment. Because for the longest time since he appeared in Civil War, he's barely mentioned Banner except for that scene in Civil War where he
mm.
asked
Yeah,
Captain America
the
who Banner
table. Yeah.
is, and they actually it's so weird because in Endgame we see Hulk and Ross share a scene in the not a scene but be in the same area in the funeral,
Hmm.
and we don't exactly know how that conversation went. Did they
Yeah.
did they back things up, or is it do they still have a lot of stuff between them? Is Ross gonna be after Banner after all these years? It's gonna be super interesting. The good news is because it's a series, I'm sure that they're gonna have a lot of room to possibly develop
Yeah.
Ross into a more stout character. With regards to the Thunderbolt stuff, I actually hate his lineup of Thunderbolts. I think it's like the worst lineup of the Thunderbolts.
Hmm.
Him, Venom, Red She-Hulk, Deadpool, Punisher. That lineup of the Thunderbolts doesn't excite me at all. But because his nickname is Thunderbolt Ross, it makes sense for him to be part of that. But I don't know if I want to see him smash alongside the team. I want him to have sort of like an Amanda Waller type of role where he's
Behind the
just like the
scene.
cool
Yeah.
behind the scenes stuff. That's what I prefer.
All right, whatever it is, I'm sure Marvel has a plan for that. Next up is a new actor is joining Falcon the Winter Soldier in the form of Carl Lumbly, who is known to play John Jones' father in Supergirl, as well as he has voiced Martian Manhunter in the Justice League animated series. And there's rumors speculating that he could be playing Isaiah Bradley. Charles, for casual fans like me, what is the impact of the Bradley character to the Captain America legacy?
Well, it's kind of big because I think yesterday, I think it was Slash Film that reported that
Yeah.
they've heard some rumblings about this character Isaiah Bradley being sort of the push Sam needs to eventually accept the mantle of Captain America. Because in the comics, Isaiah Bradley was sort of one of the earlier successful experiments of Project Rebirth. I think he precedes Steve Rogers by maybe a couple of years. But then again, that was retroactively added to the Marvel story. I mean, it was a character that was Isaiah Bradley was a character created in the mid 2000s, and they decided to make him canon because it made so much sense to add this layer of history to the Captain America story. I think it's gonna have a huge impact as the as Slash Films report indicates. I think yeah, Sam's definitely gonna need that push to take on that mantle, and what better way than to have Isaiah Bradley be the person to nudge him to the right path, because I'm sure we're gonna explore the a legacy of Captain America that we haven't heard. We're gonna hear about the other experiments that
Yeah.
may or may have not succeeded. It's gonna be a huge shock for Sam to find out that there was another a success experiment like Steve Rogers who didn't get his due because of his skin color. I'm sure that's gonna have a powerful
Mm.
impact,
Yes.
and I can't wait to see it play out on screen.
Yeah, I absolutely agree because I think it's a very good emotional anchor the set for the show. The only like the big question I have is if we look at like how did Isaiah Bradley, if he's supposed to be the original or some form of Captain America before Steve Rogers was, the only reason Steve Rogers was still pretty young in the future was because he was frozen in ice. So the question is, how do they bring Isaiah Bradley back? Is it going to
Right.
be more of a history lesson of him finding documents about this original Captain America, or does he actually meet him? Is it a curse of Captain America's to be frozen in time for some time? It's a really interesting how they're going to bring him back. I love the fact that this is exploring the history of the super soldier serum, because outside of really the integration of that being the reason why Abomination became what he is in the Incredible Hulk, it's not really a storyline they've truly explored much, because in the comics there's always like some kind of mention of, oh, this is a spin-off of the super soldier serum, or this was the inspiration. I think Extremis was kind of hinted at that it could be, but it's really nice to them also explore Captain America's past a bit more. Well, because most of the films outside of the first one kind of just focused about the character in modern time. And for Falcon, it's incredible because this is such an emotional thing to know. It is about race, and it's an important question, important story to tell about what it means for Sam Wilson to be the next Captain America.
With
Yeah.
regards to your sort of question about whether they're gonna do like a document thing, or how are they gonna
Yeah.
explain why Isaiah Bradley exists. Well, if you look at Steve Rogers' age by the time he gives the shield to Sam in Endgame, he's
Mm,
bordering on 120 years old.
that's true.
And if you sort of if you add all those years he was frozen in time and whatnot. If Isaiah Bradley is the success story we think he is, he's probably gonna be able to live until up to minimum 90 years. I don't know how old Carl Lumbly is, but
68. He's 68.
oh, if he's 68, then I'm sure they're gonna have to use a bit of prosthetics to make him a bit older. I am more curious if we're gonna see his grandson. His grandson is one part of the Young Avengers, Elijah
Oh yeah,
Bradley. I
Patriot.
wonder, that
Interesting.
Patriot. I wonder if we're gonna see him here. I wonder if they're gonna debut him here, because it makes sense, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
For
really makes
Sam
sense.
to meet like the next generation of, oh shit, this kid might be able to take the shield from you one day. I wonder if we're gonna
Mm,
have a moment like that, but it's a nice notch in this build up to the Young Avengers, because it's kind of clear now that we're definitely gonna get the Young Avengers within the next decade at least.
oh
Yeah,
yeah,
connections
definitely.
are being planted. Connections are being seeded in every one of the Disney Plus series. In the Young Avengers are surely coming in the future of the MCU. Next up, we have news here about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. We still haven't. It's confirmed, but it's still we still don't know when it will release. And recently, in an interview during the premiere night of the Disney animated movie Onward, Chris Pratt says that he doesn't know if Thor will be in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Hmm. I would love to see Thor there, but Charles, is there? What do you think? Is Thor going to appear in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 in on a cameo or a small role or a major role? Your thoughts?
I think he shouldn't. I mean, honestly, as personal preference, I don't think he should be a big part of it. I think we talked about this in one of the few the one of the previous
Yes.
episodes we did. I could see him sort of appearing at the start, where he gets kicked out of the the ship for maybe eating all the food, and then it's a nice segue to that way you can segue to a story that focuses on them, and you could also do the
Yeah.
same thing when Thor: Love and Thunder shows up. Maybe we see what happens when Thor gets kicked out of the ship. What happens? And I think for the most part he should be there for one scene, but it should not be about him.
I agree. I think a cameo is probably the extent of it because the Guardians films were very focused about the emotional core of what the Guardians as a family means. If they keep Thor in, they kind of have to. They can spin it like he's the uncle no one wanted.
All right. Yeah.
They kind of got stuck with this uncle who's kind of he doesn't want to get a job. He's not leaving them alone. So I think it would be a funny recurring joke, like he keeps showing up even though they try to get rid of him constantly throughout the film. It just shows up in every scene. Emotional is like, hey guys, what you guys doing? The only thing is for me is like the wonkiness of where Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is in the timeline because we all assumed that if Thor was joining them, that would be the first movie we see. But now all of a sudden, Thor Love and Thunder is coming out first. So I still kind of think that the story of Guardians and Thor will be explored a little bit in Thor 4 by pretty much just a cameo of like, hey, get out or something. And then they can kind of focus on the Guardians in the third one. But it's so strange because Guardians of the Galaxy 3 we all thought would come earlier. It got postponed, and now this kind of makes this all very open for interpretation, let's say.
Yeah. It kind of confused casual fans. Like Thor will show as they saw Thor join the Guardians at the end of Endgame, and they had that impression that during Guardians that he will be there. Like they made fan arts about it, they made names about it as Guardians of the Galaxy, they call it, and I can see him like we've earlier mentioned it in past episode that Thor messes up a mission, and then that's why he's kicked out.
We don't
Anyway,
even know if he's going to
yeah.
be thin again.
Oh yeah, we don't
That's like
know
the
his
next thing.
appearance.
Are they gonna keep him big? Because a lot of fans really latched onto that idea, and it'll be interesting to see where they bring Thor moving forward. Because Joe brings up an interesting point that yeah, Love and Thunder is coming out first. They're gonna have to explain one way or another why the Guardians aren't there if they aren't there, and it'll be interesting. I'm sure Chris Pratt is just as confused as us, but I'm sure James Gunn is very willing to adjust to whatever story they have going.
Definitely, yeah.
I think it will be like what happened to the arc reactor of Tony Stark. In Iron Man 3, it was removed, and then we saw in Avengers Age of Ultron, he has that, like in the Iron Man suit. It's like that, right? Like a throwaway line with referencing, oh, I need a hobby, just training suits, and I can't stop, blah, 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 and, just like that. Throwaway reference. But I would love to see that idea of ours that, Chris Pratt, Star-Lord and Thor joking around with fat jokes, a training montage, and yeah,
Yeah,
Sure, they did make the joke that both of them were getting chubby, so they can kind of combine that.
yes. Also, okay, going up next, the last news for the rundown is there will be a big Disney Plus event next month, on March 5th to be exact, and there will be exclusive look at the Disney Plus slate of the MCU. And what do you think, guys? Do you think we will get we'll finally get to see a full trailer for at least Falcon and the Winter Soldier?
I think they're gonna show a trailer for a combined trailer again, maybe just with a little bit more footage, but not much because they can't show their cards too early. I mean, it's a great idea to have a confirmed slate release because it is the European launch as well. I'm still waiting to get my hands on Disney Plus here in Austria,
Yeah.
but it will be interesting because the challenge is they kind of already showed a trailer for 3 shows. Two of them don't even release until the end of the year,
Hmm.
and we don't even have exact release dates now. So this March event, that's the question for me: is are we going to get exact release dates for at least Falcon the Winter Soldier and WandaVision?
Makes
Because
sense.
all we know is it's kind of the month. So it's an interesting. I like the strategy, and I'm really hoping they show some like Kevin Feige comes out and kind of reveals some stuff because we don't know if he's there at all or not. So it could just be like one guy responsible with Disney Plus saying, "Oh, these are our shows, and here's like a a short demo reel." And so it's going to be interesting. Certainly something to keep an eye on.
I am interested in knowing whether, because I'm sure they're gonna give us like the general month of the shows, like Miss Marvel is gonna come out spring 2021, like something like that. Maybe not the month,
Mm,
or but maybe like the season, what quarter of the year we're gonna get it. I'm interested in knowing whether these sort of these sort of slate, this announcement will be the first inkling of our Phase 5, because last year when Kevin Feige did that Phase 4 announcement in Comic Con, it kind of seemed definite that that was the Phase 4 slate.
Hmm.
And because they're adding so much to it, I wonder if all these shows, Moon Knight, She-Hulk, Miss Marvel, I wonder if it's part of Phase 5, and this sort of
mm,
event on March 5 will be the first Phase 5 reveal. I'm super curious on what happens with that. Um, I'm also curious whether they're gonna announce films, because it makes sense to sort of just plant the flags as early as this, but they could be saving that for Comic Con this year or D23.
And I guess we're going to either find out a definitive date, or
mm.
a massive trailer of sorts, or like a montage, like what we have, a longer one that we have in the Super Bowl. That's this one, yeah.
Mm.
And that's gonna wrap all the news here in the past week of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And now we're gonna move to the exchange where we talk about what's the best. We're gonna talk about what's not the best. We're gonna talk about all the latest about the MCU here. And our topic for this exchange is, there have been a lot of deleted scenes since the inception of the Infinity Saga box set, since its release. And what is the best deleted scene in the Infinity Saga that you feel like would have ended up in the final cut? And the first one is Charles. What do you think is the best deleted scene in the Infinity Saga?
A couple of days ago, I saw some concept art of War Machine in Infinity War fighting remotely through that hologram tech Tony Stark invented in Iron Man 3. It's not necessarily a deleted scene because it was never filmed, but it was more like a unused concept. I'd say that was
Mm.
my pick because I like the idea of Rhodey still recovering in his from his injuries in Civil War, because we never exactly got an inkling of what his journey was to
Yeah.
becoming quote unquote whole again. Because in Endgame he was perfectly fine in that armor. He was fighting normally in Infinity War, and I like the idea of him sort of at the start of Infinity War. It's him still struggling with his injuries and that he can't fight physically yet. And they
Mm.
could have done like a nice sort of 2 minute moment where we they showed him fighting remotely at the start, because the scene originally was that Rhodey would show up in Scotland to help out Vision and Wanda, and when Rhodey opens up the helmet, he's not there. He's back in New York, still reeling from his injuries, and I thought that would be a nice touch. That by the end of the film, he would be forced to sort of overcome his injuries and fight physically in the fight in Wakanda. But we didn't get that, and I feel like that would have been amazing.
Joe, on the top of your head, what is the best deleted scene in Infinity Saga?
For me, it's a small scene from Age of Ultron, which just is really interesting with Captain America seeing his face with the wings saying fascist on the wall, and he takes off the helmet as a result. I don't know, something about the scene, it says a lot like about, Captain America, who he is politically speaking, how he's viewed at the time. I think Age of Ultron really opened the floodgates to how characters can be seen outside of their hero actions. And I just love the fact that it explains why he always runs around without his helmet.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful moment where Steve sort of goes down the Quinjet. Then the first thing he sees
Mhm.
is a graffiti of him vandalized saying fascist, and it's 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 so cool because like you said, we've never seen the international what international eyes look at, what would they think of the Avengers, and him seeing realizing, oh shit, I'm an asshole to these people because of because of the
Yeah.
A in my head, because of what the A stands for. And yeah, it's a nice touch. It definitely explains why he fights basically a war
Without.
without a helmet.
Yeah.
It's kind of careless if you think about it, but it's a nice touch for sure.
My scene, for me, one of the best deleted scene in the Infinity Saga for me is that the deleted Infinity War scene between Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, and Mantis when they work together to recover the souls of Star-Lord and Drax and Nebula in Titan.
Mm.
See that it was leaked before and it was debunked. Like it's not from a movie. Like there's this line from Doctor Strange like Peter, they're not dead. They're just like help me save them. Someplay. Like I wish I could see
Mhm.
more. It's more of that dynamic because that is very rare to happen again in the next 5 years or 6 years, 7 years. Seeing Spider-Man work with the Guardians and to recover, to help out the other Guardians. It's a big scene. It has a big impact on me when I saw it.
One scene
Mm.
I think was very interesting when all these deleted scenes started surfacing was Bruce Banner's scene with Call Obsidian, where he becomes Smart Hulk by the end of
Oh yeah,
their fight
Oh
in
yeah.
War. I understand why that was deleted because the Russos and the writers wanted to have like a true sense of defeat that no one was winning, and it would be weird. It would need a lot of some extra runtime if they wanted to, if they wanted to make
explain.
Smart Hulk happen by the end of the movie. Obviously, everyone has to react to that. It can't be
Yeah.
just he becomes Smart Hulk and then everyone gets dusted and then they're all standing there defeated. You can't have that scene because it's fucking insane to just ignore the fact that Hulk is now talking. I get why they deleted it, but I like the idea of, you know, Bruce becoming Hulk in that Hulkbuster because that was an idea scrapped from Age of Ultron. Because I remember Joss Whedon talking about a scene where they wanted to have Ultron fight Iron Man, and then Ultron would totally kick Iron Man's ass, and then when Ultron removes the helmet, it's not Tony Stark in it. It's fucking Bruce Banner. Then he becomes Hulk because they needed something to get close to Ultron, and that was an idea that I wish they could have fucking done because it would have been amazing. But we
Yeah.
didn't get it. We didn't get it also in Infinity War, so I kind of wish they did that Ultron idea.
Yeah, there was also that interaction with Black Widow at the end of that scene, right? Like,
Where Smart Hulk and Nat meet for the
yeah,
first time.
yeah,
Like Smart Hulk was a character I wanted to see as well because they kind of hinted at it throughout the film, but it was just really great to see Bruce Banner do something.
Yeah,
Because most of the time, like, it was always Hulk doing action, everything, and just giving Bruce Banner the time to shine, to just highlight, yeah, he is a smart guy, but he can also handle himself, and it was just a really fun scene to kind of see him out of his regular element. So if
yeah.
I could just add one thing, I have to say though, I've completely forgot. I do wish they added the short film, the Peter's to do list from Far From Home, into the film.
oh yeah,
At the beginning, right? Yeah,
Yeah, because I just realized it was like something that kind of, it's a great short sequence that just I think would have tied the film together. I think they didn't do it out of pacing reasons, but I think it just has some great like Peter Parker moments in it to highlight what kind of character he is.
So, those are the best deleted scenes on our book in Infinity Saga. And I hope you enjoyed this episode of the MC Exchange podcast. You can follow us on Twitter. That's twitter.com/MCUExchange. You can follow us there for more news and content. You can also like our new Facebook page. It's facebook.com/the MCUExchange. Please do like us. It's now at 300 something likes, and it's still continuing to grow every day. And you can also listen to this podcast over at Spotify, over at Podbean, over at YouTube, all in the words MC Exchange Podcast. And you can also follow me on Twitter. That's twitter.com/Aaronchino. That's AERONCHINO. Joe, your Twitter?
At that Albel, THATABERL.
And also you can follow Charles.
You can find me on Twitter at CFSBillionWeb.
All right. On that note, this has been another episode of the MC Exchange Podcast. Hope you enjoyed, and till next time.
Bye.